Alright, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, obviously the talk of this weekend was this massive guest posing that we had featuring Nick Walker, Keone Pearson, Stanimal, and Quint BeastWood. But first, we're going to talk about Nick Walker because today we got some HD footage from Gilco of Nick Walker's guest posing routine there. Yesterday we just had the cell phone footage. We got a lot of different angles, but a lot of people are talking about how good Nick Walker looked here, despite, of course, the hamstring injury. Conditioning-wise, exactly 1 month post-Olympia, which he obviously did not compete in, but he prepped for. Conditioning-wise, he's still in very good condition. He looks like he's ready to step on stage, again, aside from the injury. And I will say, unfortunately, the injury was apparent from the back and from the sides. From the front, it almost looks like there's nothing wrong, but from the back and from the sides, you can really start to see the size difference between the legs. And in the affected leg, even from the front, you can kind of see a little bit of size difference because the hamstring is kind of suffering there. But from the sides, from the back, you can see the injury, and I think he definitely made the right call not to try to compete with the injury. But I've got to say, I'm very impressed with how Nick looks here. Like I said, from the front, he almost looks in contest condition. I saw someone put up a comparison, I believe it was Fernando Arroyo, of a side-by-side from the Arnold Classic in this guest posing. And especially, like I said, from the front, he looks comparable. He looks like he could be a few weeks away from that Arnold Classic conditioning. He looks like he's still prepping for a show. And again, obviously this is a guest posing, so he's not going to look the same condition as he did at the Arnold. Obviously not, but he looks like he's within reach of that, again, mostly from the front. But I do think in this comparison, it's also worth pointing out that one of the things that Nick said he was going to do for the Olympia was come in bigger and fuller. And while the conditioning between the two is comparable, he certainly looks a lot bigger in this guest posing, which again, it's to be expected he's going to be fuller. It's a guest posing. He's technically, I guess, in the off-season recovering right now. But there is a pretty noticeable size difference between the two, but again, take it with a grain of salt because this is, in fact, a guest posing. So I do hope that Nick is able to make a full recovery and come back, and we see him on stage in the relatively near future. He's made it pretty clear that he's probably not going to do the Arnold Classic, either one of them. And honestly, we haven't really seen any top bodybuilder come back from specifically a hamstring tear. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, we've seen guys come back from bicep tears. We've seen guys come back from pec tears. But a hamstring tear like that is a little bit of a bigger deal. And honestly, I can't think of a good example of a guy that's come back from a major hamstring tear and then did well after that. For example, Chris Bumstead tore his bicep, and he won with a torn bicep at the Olympia. Came back the next year, won again. Charles Griffin recently tore his pec, won a show this year, arguably looked better than he's ever looked, and had his best Olympia placing ever. Dorian Yates won the 97 Olympia with a torn tricep, and he had torn his bicep earlier in his career. Phil Heath won the Olympia with a hernia, but we haven't really seen a dominant bodybuilder come back from a hamstring tear and do well. My point is just that, like, arm stuff is more common, tearing a bicep, tearing a tricep, and it seems to be easier to come back from. We just haven't really seen it with the lower body yet at the top level in professional bodybuilding. In fact, if you guys can think of an example, let me know in the comments below. Just off the top of my head, I can't think of one. So a hamstring tear where a bodybuilder came back as good as ever or better than ever after the injury. Let me know if you guys can think of one. Now, in addition to Nick Walker, we also got to see Keone Pearson, your brand new 212 Mr. Olympia champion. And I just want to give Keone a little bit of credit here because this is what I like to see from the champions. And Sean Clarita did the same thing. He did a lot of guest posing and appearances as 212 champion. But Keone is already off to a good start, doing the thing that we want to see. Appearances, guest posing. He's active with that Olympia title. Just 1 short month after the Olympia, he's out here doing guest posings. And obviously, he's enjoying the offseason. He looks significantly fuller, significantly bigger. But I really like to see Keone out here like this, representing the title, giving the fans what they want to see. Again, a lot of people have criticized Hadi Choopan and even Big Ramy for not making as many appearances, blowing off appearances, not being as accessible to the fans, this quote-unquote not a good ambassador of the title. So I think that when we see guys that are out there doing what we want to see, we should commend that as much as we are negative towards people that don't do that. So when we see a guy that just won his first ever Olympia title, Keone Pearson, and not even 1 month after he's already out doing guest posings, instead of enjoying the holidays in the off season, I think we got to commend that. I think that's what we want to see. We got to point that out and kind of thank these guys for doing that. And I think that goes for Nick Walker too. I mean, the fact that he had this injury, he couldn't compete, he could easily shut it down for the year and say, you know what, I'm done, no appearances, I just need to recover. I'm not going to do anything else for the rest of the year, enjoy the holidays, whatever. It's nice to see Nick at this guest posing as well. And let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think Keone will successfully defend and retain his 212 Olympia title this year? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, also, at this big guest posing, there's a lot of footage, we got a lot of videos, a lot of stuff to talk about. I think it's also worth pointing out Quint BeastWood was there. We've been awaiting Quint BeastWood's return to the stage. I think it's been over a year now since we've seen him compete. He's been putting on size, enjoying the offseason. I think clearly by far the biggest bodybuilder up there, but I think it's obvious that he's deep into his offseason, probably conditioning-wise the least of the three of Keone, Nick, and himself. But Quint BeastWood, he's a guy that really generated a lot of conversation the last time we saw him compete. I believe it was at the Texas Pro. Big guy, kind of a structure similar to a Samson or an Andrew Jacked. Tall guy. I think he might be taller than both of them, Samson and Andrew Jacked. I think he's 6'2 or 6'3. He's a guy that's well into the 300s in the offseason. I'm sure in this video, he's probably around 320, maybe higher. And actually, I just saw a post. He is 6'1". So he is probably the same height as Andrew Jacked and a little bit taller than Samson. So I think his height kind of lends that size to the same type of structure, the same type of frame as Samson and Andrew Jacked, kind of a more aesthetic look, but able to support a pretty significant amount of muscle without kind of blowing out his midsection or throwing off his lines. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think that Samson, do you think that Andrew Jacked, do you think they're comparable to what we're seeing from Quint BeastWood, and do you think he could have a similar career trajectory as those two guys just based on this? Now, for the final story, I want to talk about Urs Kalsinski, the Miracle Bear, for a second here. So Urs recently did an interview, I believe it was with Fuad, and he said he intends to, or at least wants to, compete in all three Arnold Classics in 2024, which means the Arnold UK, the Arnold US, and the Arnold Classic Brazil. And they're all relatively close to each other. They're all basically spring shows. I believe the Brazil is typically late April, maybe sometimes early May. And then, of course, both Arnold Classics UK and US are going to be in March. So pretty close together. And I think that would be, aside from the travel, a little bit easier as far as the proximity of all three shows to hit all three, then focus on Urs's Olympia prep. So again, Urs is another guy that I have tremendous respect for. He already competed twice after the Olympia and won 2 shows, but it's important to keep in mind he was 3rd at the Olympia. He doesn't need to qualify. He doesn't need to compete. So he might do 5 shows prior to the Olympia, which I think would be very impressive. Again, considering the fact that he's top 3, he doesn't have to qualify, doesn't have to compete. He can shut it down and focus only on the Olympia. But he's taking a similar approach to Samson Dauda because we know that Samson is doing at least 2 of the Arnold Classics. I don't know if he's going to Brazil or not, but the UK and the US he is doing. So I think both Urs and Samson are doing the right thing here. They were both 3rd at the Olympia, 1 in Classic, 1 in Open. They even collabed together last week. But I think this is how you make a name for yourself. Maybe this year both of them weren't ready to win the Olympia. Maybe they're still a little bit off to where they need to be to win the Olympia. But they were both top 3. They're both in that conversation. And a good way to build a lot of momentum and stay at the tips of everybody's tongues is to keep competing and keep winning shows, big shows like the Arnolds. And I think Urs would stand a pretty good chance at that. I don't know what Ramon's plan is, if he's for sure doing the Arnold Classic Ohio, probably doing the Brazil show, right? And I hate to say this, but if I were a pro bodybuilder, I would be doing every Arnold that I possibly could while Arnold is still here to present the award. Because let's be realistic, Arnold's in his late 70s. And he was a professional bodybuilder. He had some of the most high-stress jobs imaginable as governor, as this big Hollywood superstar. And unfortunately, he's not going to be around forever. And if he's already in his late 70s, I mean, how old do you think he's going to live to be? He had a major heart issue, major heart surgery. He's probably not going to live to 100. So if I were a competitive pro, I'd be doing every Arnold that I possibly could while he's still here, because you want to get that award from Arnold himself if you win the show. Now, the final story that I have for you guys today, Hadi Choopan arriving back to Iran. And honestly, his reception this year looks just as big as every other year. It doesn't look much different at all. Size-wise, even though he didn't win this year, the same number of people seem to have turned up for their champion. So I think maybe this is important for him to remember in the future if he takes second again. Just because he didn't win does not mean his fans love him any less, especially the fans from his country. He's like their hero over there. He's the best bodybuilder, arguably, to ever come from Iran. And he's the first ever Iranian Mr. Olympia. He's always going to get this type of welcome when he goes back. Whether he's first, second, third, fifth, whatever he is, he's still going to be received like a hero. So as disappointed as he was on stage, taking off his medal, walking off the stage before the finals were over, it doesn't look like he had that much to really be upset about because the fans still love him, and he's always going to be the Persian wolf. But that's going to wrap it up for the video, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at NickStrengthPower. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.